Welcome to the PR Maven podcast, a podcast all about growing your network and building your brand through traditional and digital networking techniques. I'm Nancy Marshall, the PR Maven and CEO of Marshall Communications. I've been strengthening brands through PR for over 35 years, and now I'm celebrating the success of executives, influencers, business owners, and entrepreneurs from all around the world, all of whom have cultivated their brands and broadened their networks through traditional and digital networking methods. Each week, I interview one of these interesting and influential individuals and provide an opportunity for you, the PR Maven Nation, to gain insights from their strategies and stories. So stay tuned for this week's episode, and thanks for listening. I'm Nancy Marshall, the PR Maven. I've been working in PR throughout my long career, and I have a special interest in personal branding. That's what makes you stand out from everyone else who does the same thing you do, and it attracts people who need what you have to offer. I'm a keynote speaker, an author, and a columnist for the Forbes Agency Council and Main Biz. My audiences have said that helping them think about their superpower has changed the way they think about their careers and their lives. I hope you like this episode, and I hope you'll share it with other people who might be interested in hearing it. And today's episode is powered by Pitchcraft, and you'll hear more about Pitchcraft in a bit. But with me today is my guest, April Chavez, who's a performance coach. So welcome to the PR Maven podcast, April.
Thank you so much, Nancy, for having me here with you today.
Well, it's so nice to have you. And even though we haven't yet been in the same space, we've just met on Zoom, and thank goodness for Zoom. I feel like I know you, and it's so great. You're such a warm, welcoming person.
Oh, thank you. And that is right back at you, Nancy. It's beautiful when we can come together and go into like-mindedness, etc. We live in such a cool day and age to be able to do that, like Zoom.
I know. It's amazing when you think that, just before the pandemic, nobody had even heard of Zoom. And I mean, I guess we had FaceTime and other things, but we didn't really use them for business. So it is a new age, and there's good things about it.
So many good things.
Yeah. So April Chavez is a captivating public speaker, a former police officer, and a mother of 3 miracle daughters. And I want to hear more about that. So diagnosed with lupus at the tender age of 15, she has been a symbol of resilience and an advocate for comprehensive wellness encompassing spiritual, intellectual, and physical aspects. In January of 2022, she transitioned into broadcasting and public speaking, creating the Wellness Driven Life Show. Here, she effectively guides people toward total wellness by interviewing the world's greatest innovators. As a performance coach for Driven Livin' LLC, April uses neuroplasticity principles and relaxation techniques to help clients create high performance habits. Her deep dive into the spiritual, intellectual, and physical aspects of our being further enriches her coaching methodology, making her a unique figure in the wellness industry. So, April, tell us about your career and how you got into it in the first place.
Nancy, thank you so much for asking. And that introduction was awesome. And I hear my guests say the same thing. So, it's been a long journey, just as it has with so many of us, right? To be where we are today. And I bring up so often that we like to think that what we do, what we have done, what we've experienced in our past can't be in relation to something that we want to create or be moving forward. But there's nothing further from that truth. The fact is that when we have these experiences and all of these life situations, it only intensifies the beauty that we can bring to the forefront in order to inspire others. So my background with law enforcement, having children at a very young age because I didn't think that I could. I was told I couldn't because of that lupus diagnosis. And moving into law enforcement after that and living with all of these things has really brought me to be very passionate about overall well-being because health and wellness was always at the forefront by default. If I wanted to be better, improve, and not let the disease define me. And so moving forward, when I stepped outside of law enforcement and I stepped outside of corporate, et cetera, I stepped into entrepreneurship. And I knew that health and wellness was going to be my scene because it's something that I have been concentrating on forever. And not that I am an expert and not that I went to school for it, but I have studied it very intensely in so many different aspects. And noticing different things throughout life really gives me an idea. And so I bring that to the world by interviewing people, and I love doing it.
Well, obviously, it shows that you're passionate about what you do. And I know from my own personal experience, when you are passionate about your work, it makes every day just so much more of a pleasure, right? It makes you want to wake up and get out of bed in the morning. So I'm glad that you found something that you are passionate about.
They say so often that you have to have that passion along with authenticity, and all of those things to really be living as I would say with my tagline, a wellness driven life. And having something to want to get out of bed every morning is something we all desire. And coming to that can take a journey, can't it?
Yes, indeed. You have to try out a lot of things. And, for me, I worked for other people throughout my 20s, other companies and organizations. But in my 30s, I started my own business. And I've been so happy, just being an entrepreneur for all these years. So that was what I was born to do, I believe.
Yes, yes. Well, Nancy, speaking of trying out a lot of things, that's that's really what brings us to what we do because we tried out so many things.
Right. And along those lines, you were a police officer. And how did being a police officer influence your approach to wellness?
Oh, Nancy, on so many levels. The experience that I had in that position, in that career field, um, I wouldn't take it back for anything. I was able to see on so many aspects the way that people live, the way that the world works on a lot of different areas. So, uh, some of the first examples of learning about health and wellness when it comes to law enforcement, when it comes to safety, when it comes to first responding, is environmental aspects. That was one of the first things, and also breath work in order to calm yourself down. But the environmental piece really started in school. When I was in criminal justice and studying all of that and learning case studies of the broken window theory. That's a really great example of how our environment affects our internal decisions, right? So, the broken window theory is when there's a broken window, and if it's cleaned up and it's fixed and it's polished, then the community tends to have less crime because there's a sense of pride and ownership that goes along with that. And when you don't clean it up and you leave it as is, things become disarray. And I noticed that a lot when I was boots on the ground, when I was doing responding. We had a lot of domestic violence. In fact, that was the majority of the caseload was domestic violence, unfortunately. But what I noticed when I went into people's homes and as we responded was the cases that were the most intense, that had the most issues, that were the most reoccurring, well, their environment was chaotic. And so if you think about that when it comes to just an existential, and that's not the right word, but just the environment that we live in, it has an effect on that internal piece of us.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, everything that we do, whether it's exercising, eating, sleeping, and the people that we interact with every day, that all influences our being, and how we feel on the inside definitely emanates to the outside.
100%.
Yeah.
And of course, we know that overall wellness has a lot of different buckets in it. And I took a long time, and there's people that have come up with the 8 buckets, with the 5 buckets, with the this and that. And there's so much that you can entail in that. So learning how to calm yourself down was really something that came very early on when you're in situations that are life or death situations, very high risk. You have to learn how to calm yourself down enough in order to respond effectively for yourself and
Right.
others.
Because if you're the police officer responding, if you're not calm, then the people that you're trying to help won't have confidence in you, right?
That's 100%. And how could you have confidence in yourself if
Yeah,
you
right.
if you don't know how to do that?
Yeah. So, in what ways does your experience with lupus inform your advocacy for wellness?
Mm. Well, again, lifelong thing, starting early on. Um, let's take my children for an example. So I was diagnosed at 15 with systemic lupus, and I had symptoms since birth. I had a lot of issues between 8 and 10 years old. And so I didn't lead the average life as a school child when I had to come out of school at least once a week to go to the hospital to have blood work done or what have you. And at 15, going on, I think it was 17, I was told I couldn't have children. And so I was sexually active, and I was like, well, what am I using birth control for? And so at 18, I became pregnant, and I felt, well, I suppose I'm just going to miscarry if I can't have children. So the pregnancy continued, and here lies a beautiful little girl that came into the world. And the other thing was that it drastically changed the course of my life, as it would for anyone, who steps into parenthood. And at a young age, I had plans. I decided, well, I didn't want children anyway. And so I had this career plan lined up, this school lined up. I wanted to be a forensic entomologist. And so, when I had Sage Amaya, my 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 little girl, I knew that things were a little different when it came to what I was being told and what was actually happening. And so I was still living with the dis-ease, and also knowing that maybe some things are possible and maybe some things can happen. And I always felt that way. I think that one of the beautiful things about me being diagnosed and having a disease as a child was my mind frame around it. I just wanted to be like the other kids. I didn't want that disease to define me. I didn't want to read up on it. I didn't want to accept it. I didn't want to learn about it. I didn't want to know about it. And so I think by default, I didn't allow that into my subconscious to define me inevitably. And so it really did aid in how my life took a turn. And going into law enforcement was part of that. I wanted to show the world and myself that I wasn't my disease. The military wouldn't take me because they had access to health records. So that's why I chose law enforcement, and a couple other reasons outside of that. I grew up during the Columbine shooting era. So some of those influences, I had a friend that was robbed and shot in downtown Denver, so those are some of the things that really aided my decision. Plus forensic entomology, that's going into that criminal justice side, the science side, the curiosity side, the how do these things work and how do we solve cases? And so I knew that if I stepped into law enforcement that would get me a little closer.
Yeah, yeah. And obviously, you're the kind of person who thrives on helping others. I can tell that about you. So I can see how law enforcement would be fulfilling for someone who thrives on helping others.
Yeah, it certainly is. It's not for everyone, of course, because you see and hear and experience. It's emotionally taxing.
Yeah, I can imagine. So now you're doing performance coaching, and how can performance coaching help people to develop their personal brand?
As I say, everybody needs a coach and probably numerous coaches throughout your time, right? We all need people to help lead us, to guide us. That's why we share stories, to inspire others, to influence each other, to take action, to be better. And so, as far as peak performance goes, I take a little bit of a different spin and I guide people into, a deeper, relaxed state, because that's really what helps change our brain. And that's the best way to change our habits, because we're habitual creatures. The body is a robot controlled by the mind. And so, because of that, what easier place to go than into a relaxed state where that's the only way to access our creative state and to rewire those neurotransmitters.
Absolutely. I always was a very fidgety child. And I know that my parents wanted to try to help me learn to relax, but I don't think they ever really knew exactly how to do that. And, I think that I would have done so much better in school and at home if I had been able to do exactly what you're saying. Because I was just always like wiggling and talking. I never
Yeah.
was able, and now I've learned to meditate, and that really helps to calm my mind and focus my mind. And I wish I had learned those skills when I was 10 or 12 years old.
Yes. I am a certified hypnotherapist, and that's part of the piece that I offer my clients. And so much of that came from a few different experiences and resources in life. I talked about learning breath work, learning how to calm yourself down in very serious situations. I, like many, many, many people, have experienced anxiety and anxiety attacks. And what does that feel like? Well, it feels a little different for everyone, but sometimes it can feel like you're having an actual heart attack because our body is sweating and everything is so intense and we feel like the world is going to crumble around us. And it doesn't stop until you have an understanding of what the body is actually doing. And then you learn how to calm it down and slow down that heart rate. So that's one of the first things. And then I came into Dr. Joe Dispenza's work and learning how to meditate, really learning how to go within. What does that feel like? What does that look like? How do you heal the body? So, all of those things really played a major role. Plus, having a disease for your entire life, you start to see patterns. And all of those patterns led to major uh, health issues when I experienced traumas in life, where I experienced major transitions. And 6 months later, I'd be very ill or hospitalized. And I think just the knowledge and the understanding and the awareness of all of these things, I mean, that's how we get to choose to heal ourselves, because we know what's happening. We know what the body and the heart and the mind are doing.
Yeah, you mentioned Dr. Joe Dispenza to me previously, and I just this morning watched a video of Jay Shetty
Yeah,
interviewing Dr. Joe Dispenza, and we'll put
it's
a link to
amazing.
that in the show notes because, yes, he's obviously a great thought leader on this topic. And, in talking about your personal brand, if you can go within yourself and think more clearly and calmly, then you're going to present yourself to the outer world in a more authentic, genuine way. And of course, I believe a strong personal brand is your own authentic self. So I can see how having that, I want to call it clairvoyance, clear thinking is
Yep.
really the
It's
way
clarity.
to present yourself to the world, as the real you.
100%. And Nancy, you've got that right. Our brand is like looking in a mirror. I mean, when you listen to people guiding you through that process of what it is to brand yourself, it is just that. Your client is you. And so just put that mirror up and start creating. And that's what makes you and sets you apart from all of the competition, because, you know, there is no competition because you're you. Your
Yeah.
brand is unique to you. And so when we talk about bringing clarity to light, this is a really great example, Nancy. So, all of the great minds in history, Albert Einstein, Napoleon, those people took naps or went within. They meditated. I believe Abraham Lincoln, we have case studies on that as well. And so when you think about all of these incredible great minds, and the list goes on, but they knew how to gain clarity because they went within. And so it's just a fascinating time again when information is coming at such a rapid pace, where we get to learn all of these different things and these different insights in order to improve ourselves. So, if we talk about the rhythms of the earth and the sun and the moon, and like 2 p.m. is a really great time to take a nap. It just brings that clarity and the creativity in order to present yourself and your brand or whatever it is you want to the world.
Yeah. Well, I am a big advocate of naps.
Yes.
I really love a good nap in the afternoon. So if that helps you to present yourself more authentically, I'm a big supporter of that.
100%. And I take more and more as I continue to learn and as I get older.
Yeah. Well, we're going to take a short break. We'll hear more from April in a moment. But first, I want to talk about our experience with Pitchcraft. Of course, this is the PR Maven podcast, and Pitchcraft is a community that helps educate PR professionals about journalists and how to pitch stories to them. And there's a woman here in Maine named Elaine Terrio Courier, who I know, like, and trust. And she referred me to Pitchcraft. And now many of us on my PR team are members of this organization. And we're going to hear more from Derek and Kelsey Ogletree now. And then we'll be back with more from April in just a moment.
My name is Kelsey Ogletree.
I'm Derek Ogletree.
And we co-founded Pitchcraft to put the relationships back in public relations. I've been a journalist for about 10 years now and was laid off from my job as an editor in 2017. I decided to take the plunge into freelance writing, and really what I noticed starting in 2020 is that public relations professionals started scrambling to really figure out how to pitch stories to writers and editors during the pandemic. So that's when we really started developing the concept for Pitchcraft, which is a month-to-month membership platform really focused on helping public relations professionals build those relationships with independent journalists and editors. By joining Pitchcraft, you could save hours of research time week to week. You'll get the opportunity to personally get to know a new freelance writer every week, the opportunity to interface with editors and writers live in monthly pop-up discussions, the chance to build community with the rest of our members in weekly calls, access to e-commerce and affiliate resources, a master pitching calendar, and more. We'd love to show you how Pitchcraft can become an essential part of your PR toolkit. If you like the sound of that, book a demo with us today.
This episode is powered by Pitchcraft. Pitchcraft has been generous enough to share a discount code to share with you. If you use code PRMAVEN in all caps at checkout, you will get $200 off your first month. There is a link in the show notes. Welcome back. And today we're talking with April Chavez on the PR Maven podcast. So, April, what strategies do you use in your public relations efforts to effectively communicate the importance of spiritual,
Mm.
intellectual, and physical wellness?
Mm. My utmost strategy is to interview incredible people who talk about those subjects extensively. This year specifically, we're really honing in on spiritual aspects, not religious spirituality. And that comes to the forefront. And in my SIP Life Slowly, that is why the S is first, spirituality. And because nobody wants to pee on themselves. Or I should say piss on themselves, if I could say that here. You can. It has to come to the forefront because we are spiritual energetic beings. And if you claim otherwise, it's like saying you don't have skin. It's just a piece of us. And so bringing that into all of my social media and all of the things, it really is by bringing the experts to have their say and share with the world.
Right. And there again, if we're talking about your personal brand, I believe that your personal brand has to do with like the people that you surround yourself with also. So
Yes.
if you have a strong community of people who essentially become like your brand ambassadors, um,
Yeah.
then they become part of your PR as well. So that's a really good strategy. And what are the core principles that you emphasize in your public speaking engagements and on the Wellness Driven Life show?
Well, those are the core principles: spiritual, intellectual, and physical. And I mentioned before that, overall wellness has all the buckets and there's many, many different things. I honed it down into those, and those principles, um, really do need to have a play in life for your overall well-being. And sometimes we don't, and that's okay. I think a really big message is to have, to just be graceful with yourself, to have patience with yourself. And because life is full of ups and downs, there's seasons to everything. And if you don't allow yourself to get over that, then you can't get back to kind of having a fulfilling aspect of all of those buckets.
Right, exactly. I love the idea of having grace with yourself because
Yeah.
sometimes that little voice in your head is constantly criticizing yourself and critiquing yourself and second guessing. And if you can train that voice to be more graceful
Yeah.
and kind. Uh,
Well, we're more powerful than we can imagine. And I think that is truly the biggest message. And I want to share that with the world and share stories of healing and how to heal, because we can, and our bodies are just incredibly miraculous in that way. We are designed to heal ourselves, to replenish, to revive, and it's just really cool. And when we know that, and when we're intentional about that, that's where miracles happen.
yeah, yeah. Well, I love that. And so, how has your public speaking and podcasting helped you to grow your brand and share your message and reach your audience?
Well, my gosh, what better way to gain exposure than to be able to have uh, literally access to a worldwide audience? YouTube is about to surpass Google, if they already haven't, as the number one search engine globally. And so we concentrate the most on our YouTube channel. We concentrate the most on bringing that visual piece where the audience gets to see the emotion on our facial expressions, through those stories and through that experience and that wisdom. And so that certainly is is the way. You know, we have a few different social media platforms, and we just continue to gift the world with some of the most beautiful insights.
Well, I remember when social media kind of became a thing in the first place. And because I'm such a social person, I was like, wow, this is created just for me because now I can socialize all the time. I was so
Yeah.
grateful. And I love social media. And I almost feel like each social media platform is sort of like a different club. And it kind of has its own ethics, like, you know, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat. They
Yep.
all kind of have a different feel, but it's in my mind, it's kind of like the Chamber of Commerce, the Rotary, the Kiwanis, like all these different groups. And I just go to different platforms and I know I'll see, you know, the same people or meet new people. So I really enjoy it. I'm very grateful for social media in my life. And I'm glad that it's part of my business too.
It is. It's a great way to extend our business. And I think that nowadays you have to have knowledge and a play in that for business to be successful.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So, April, is there a book, an app, or a website that has been helpful to you personally and professionally, and why?
Oh my gosh, Nancy, yes, of course.
Ah,
So I mentioned before that Dr. Joe Dispenza, he's been one of my largest influencers for me personally. And I've been to a few of his events. And when you step into that world and you do the work, it becomes an idea or some knowledge turning into a knowing when you feel it, and when you're with a community of people who are healing themselves and others, and you feel that, you just know the possibilities. um, the other huge influence in my life is Stephen Covey, the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. That will always be one of my favorites. And there's a beautiful love story and history alongside that with my husband and me. And so I had studied that book pretty extensively. And so it will always be a part of how I present myself to the world. In fact, our programs are kind of this beautiful trickle in. And I said in the beginning too, your experiences and all of the influences that you've had really creates this incredible product of you to the world. And ours is just like that. You know, it's our influences that we've had, you know. So the safety aspect of and the first responding and the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People and Dr. Joe Dispenza, all of those things really combine this really cool program and who we are and what driven living really is.
yeah, awesome. Well, I love the driven living because I feel like I'm pretty driven myself. So I can
Yeah.
definitely connect with that and relate to that.
Yep.
So, April, how can people get in touch with you if they want to connect with you directly?
Directly. Well, LinkedIn is a really great place to connect directly. I mean, send me a message on LinkedIn. And that's my biggest playground when it comes to social media, because that's where I find a lot of the speakers that I have on the show, on the Wellness Driven Life show. And because the majority of them are keynote speakers, so they're already doing really great things. And so that's more of that professional playground, right? So to speak. And the other way to connect with me is by going to our website. You know, www.drivenliving.com, and you get a free hug. That's our freebie to the world. We wrote the 7 reasons to hug yourself, my husband and I, and there's a lot of really cool. It's another tool in your tool belt for self improvement and self love. And there's a lot of science behind that too. So that's a cool book to engulf yourself in. And I was going to say one more. Another really cool way to connect with me is I respond personally to every message that comes in, every comment that comes in our YouTube channel. So if you watch a show, and you leave comments, you get to interact with me personally.
That's awesome. And I really admire you for responding to every message. That's quite amazing, especially as your business grows.
Thank
Well,
you.
April, this has been really enjoyable. And I know, I just have a feeling in my heart that we're going to meet in person at some point, somewhere. I'm not sure where, but I know it's going to happen, and I look forward to it.
Oh, Nancy, I look forward to that as well. It'll happen.
I feel like hugging you right now. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, this has been great. So have a great day, April, and I hope everybody in PR Maven Nation has a great day as well. This episode is powered by Pitchcraft. Pitchcraft has been generous enough to share a discount code to share with you. If you use code PRMAVEN in all caps at checkout, you will get $200 off your first month. There is a link in the show notes. Thanks for listening to this episode of the PR Maven podcast. I invite you to share a review of the podcast on iTunes or your favorite podcast player. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode. You can also join the PR Maven Nation on Facebook. It's free to join, and it's a great community of like-minded individuals who are all looking to learn and grow from one another. If you use an Alexa device, use your Alexa app to search the skills and games section to find and enable the PR Maven podcast flash briefing. This will give you access to exclusive content and more PR and marketing advice. Thanks again for listening, and have a great rest of your week, PR Maven Nation.